Okay, thank you all for joining this webinar. We would like to present our analysis on certain aspects of sustainable use regulation, a draft of sustainable use regulation that was published on 22nd June, so 8 days ago. And we would like to discuss the most burning topics, which is certainly Harmonized Risk Indicator 1, and Helmut will tell us more about it later. And we also ask Christian to present a Danish model for calculating the risk of pesticide use, and this will be Danish model. And we will ask Christian later to present this model that we would prefer to have in sustainable use regulation. We had a meeting of a group of NGOs on Fridays, and Helmut presented the indicator, and the conclusion was that it is actually better not to have this new regulation than to have it with this risk indicator, because this risk indicator, as Helmut says, points in totally wrong direction. So other topics we will present are reduction targets and the concept of intensity that was introduced, and integrated pest management. And we would also like to discuss it at the end, our plans and to see what we can all together do. And first, I would like to ask Henriette to present, to explain a timetable. I will start sharing now my screen. Can you all see the screen?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you put it on presentation mode, Nelly?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's lovely to see all of you. I'm very happy that it's lovely. I think it's very nice we're having this first meeting. So I just come from a meeting with the head of unit of DG Sante, who proposed the Sustainable Use Directive and has been working on many drafts. So of course, you know, today is only a first presentation. There are many topics of what was released last week, which was edited in the last minute, and therefore we are still trying to struggle to find out the details of it, but at least let's get it started. So I was asked first to make a timetable. Okay, so like, you know, it was released last week, and today, right now, in 10 minutes, the Commissioner Kyriakides of Sante will present it to ComEnvy. We are hoping that ComEnvy in the European Parliament will get the file. So what happened is that Kyriakides, he goes there, he presented to ComEnvy, and then discussions will start. Who will have the file? Who will be the shadow rapporteur? Who will be the rapporteur? So this will probably only start to materialize in September. But what is also happening is that the European Council, they have already announced that they will have their first working party to talk about the suit on the 13th of July. So they will have one meeting before the summer break, and there will be, they can bring 2 and 2 delegates. So they can bring 2 people sitting on the table negotiating and 2 people sitting behind. So like I think you saw yesterday, I sent you all an email asking you that you start lobbying your national parliament to make sure that in the delegation it's not only staff from the commission, from the agriculture ministry, but also from the health and environment ministry. It is possible. It's for the member states themselves to define what. Then there's a public consultation that was released a couple of days ago, and there Europe is asking EU citizens what they think about the new proposal. So they have released the proposal, and they have released the impact assessment. So it's very bureaucratic, but we should maybe try to find a model so that we can make sure that as many as possible citizens reply. Then, yeah, like I said, in the autumn, the Parliament will start negotiating, and so will the Council. The Council will have 2 meetings, working group meetings, so it's behind closed doors, months as from September. So it will be much more easy for us to follow the Parliament discussions because it's much more open, but it's still very important that we follow both of them. So this morning, Andrew, he's just told me that European Economic and Social Committee, they will also make a report. So these are the different players from the different member states who has a committee here. And I don't know about the Committee of the Region, but we have a lot of work to do, and any kind of help to work on this jointly would be welcome. Back to you, Natalia. Or anybody has any questions? Maybe does any have any questions or?
Not now, but we can discuss it later. We will have time for a discussion. Yeah, Helmut?
Maybe one question. The decision, who will be the 2 and 2 people in council representing the member states? How many time do we have to influence this in the member states?
So it will be a group that they are establishing now, and I think it will be the same. I mean, it's for the member states to define. Huh? So I don't know, maybe they could say, okay, we will be 4 agricultural delegates, and it's only when we discuss about sensitive areas, we will send an environment representative. But if we are playing the game right, we could tell them, look, you should always have an environment representative, even when you are discussing IPM, even when you are discussing, so you should already from the beginning make sure you have 1 health representative and 1 environment representative or whatever, So it would be a little bit for the ministry to decide them themselves. I think also if they can rotate and things like this. But I think it is now the moment to try to influence them. So yesterday I told the German delegation, because as you know, the German had Greens in the delegation, said, please make sure you make some noise so that we make sure that the environment and health representatives are also there. And they will try to do so. So if any of you have good contacts, try to find out and let me know. Then we can learn from each other, because it's also new to me. I also don't know I don't have all the replies, what is happening across Europe. But also I want to tell you that it is not, I asked Alice from Flanders, how long can the negotiation take? Because it's important for us a little bit to know what will happen over time. And there are no rules. But then Andrew, the head of unit of DT Sunday, told me that normally, and this is also what I always hear, you have a negotiation on 1.5 years, maximum 2 years. If you don't have a deal within 2 years, it seems like there's no political will, and then you will never have a deal. So we expect that there will be 1.5 years, 2 years of negotiations.
Thank you, Henriette, for this valuable information. It's not good to hear that there is no limitation, but yeah, let's hope that at least in 2 years we will have finished file. So I will just glance through main objectives of the new regulation. This regulation has 4 main objectives. The first objective aims to reduce the use and the risk of synthetic pesticides, and to reduce the use of more hazardous pesticides. These are also candidates for substitution that should have, against Regulation 1107, been gradually phased out and replaced with less toxic substances. The report that Salome from Pan Europe made shows that this has not been done, and the actual content of residues in fruits and vegetables has actually increased over the years since 2011. So we hope that this new regulation will deal with it, and within 2 years we will have at least not another increase until this regulation will be enforced. Then the other objective is to increase the uptake of integrated pest management, meaning that integrated pest management should be priority to the use of pesticides. Unfortunately, it was not the case until now. And also the objective is to increase the use of less hazardous and non-chemical alternatives as one of the tools to decrease the pesticide consumption. Then the other objective is to improve the availability of data for measuring the progress of monitoring and to measure the progress of achieving European Green Deal objectives. Then third objective is to improve the implementation and the application and the enforcement of legal provision across all member states, who needs to improve effectiveness and efficiency and to deal with objectives and to enforce all this legislation into their national legislations. And then fourth objective is promotion and adoption of new technologies, which we are not so in favor of, but yeah, this is the objective. So it means use of drones and more control of equipment for precision application. According to this new regulation, we will have better aligned objectives, a better alignment with objectives of the European Green Deal. It means 50% reduction and also better uptake of integrated pest management. This is very important to reduce the risk of pesticide use and the amount of pesticides that is used across the member states. Particularly, most hazardous pesticides are the one that needs to be phased out. There are also, they should have already been banned, and they are also in this target of 50% reduction. Which is really bad because the consequence they have is also on directly on human health, on nerve system, also on pollinators, and those pesticides should be banned. Sustainable Use Directive 128 was evaluated by two independent, so-called independent evaluators, and the results are that current directive was only moderately effective, and the weaknesses, the main weaknesses were among the implementation and enforcement of integrated pest management, meaning that member states did not put effort to establish a system which will enable the decrease of pesticide use, which means that those systems should help reduce pesticide use by providing system that will enable, for example, crop rotation, intercropping, and use of all these preventative methods that will decrease the pest infestation, and that will favor the methods, mechanical methods of dealing with the weeds. Also, the member states did not put a lot of efforts to establish national action plans that would be more effective. There were no quantitative targets, and member states did not put efforts to reduce pesticide use. And as we already stated, there is no effective monitoring system. We have monitoring system of pesticide sales, of putting active substances on the market, but we don't know where these active substances are used, on which crops, in which time, in which amount. So we need improvement on the monitoring system. In this regulation, for the first time, the European Citizens Initiative were mentioned. It was mentioned concerning the glyphosate, ECI on ban on glyphosate later, and the Commission replied to this letter in 2017, and they stated that they need to reevaluate the need for EU-wide mandatory targets for pesticides. And also, they mentioned the ECI Save Bees and Farmers, even though the ECI is not validated yet, but it is mentioned, and it is stated that this ECI calls for 80% reduction, and it is important to start with the most hazardous pesticides. And it is also stated that I think that it was stated that we are asking for 100% reduction to 2030, which is really great. And a big congratulations to initiators of this initiative. It was really great, and we mentioned this initiative in all meetings, in all advisory meetings, and I think they heard our message, and it's fantastic to have this written clearly in the regulation. So targets. For the first time, we have a concept of intensity implemented in the regulation. Our demand was, as I stated, 80% reduction and immediate ban of most hazardous pesticides. So this regulation is, in its title, doesn't have the word pesticides. It is called regulation on pesticide plant protection products, which I really don't like, because it sounds like these chemicals are protecting, they are in a way protecting plants that are genetically modified to resist these toxins, or they're unaffected because the targets are insects, but the targets in the end are also other animals and insects in a chain, and targets in the end are also we, because all these chemicals affect our nervous system too. So we will be asking today in this advisory meet, in this exchange of opinion with Commissioner Kyriakides, why the name is changed, because plant protection products can also be foils and mulch and other things that actually protect plants, but are not pesticides, and they're not, this category is just too wide. Even though there is issue with the biocides, they're also in this category, but we still think that pesticides should be clearly stated in the name. So regarding the targets, in regulation, it is stated that 50% binding target is obligatory on EU level. But it is allowed to member states to adjust their national targets according to their progress. But let me just state that this reduction in risk and in use of chemical plant protection products is reduction target 1, and the use of most hazardous plant protection products is reduction target 2. So these are all called EU targets to 2030. Each member state should contribute to achieving the target by setting and achieving their national targets. And this target should be compared to the average of the years from 2015 to 2017. And the monitoring and progress in risk reduction will be maintained even in this regulation through the Harmonized Risk Indicator system. We have two indicators now. Risk indicator 1, which is based on quantities of active substances that are placed on the market under regulation 1107. And those substances are categorized in 4 groups. And we have Harmonized Risk Indicator 2, which is based on the number of emergency authorizations that are granted by member states to the professional users. And in this regulation, we will have new Harmonized Risk Indicator 2A that applies more parameters and is kind of improved, and it is based on statistics on the number of derogations and the properties of these pesticides, of these active substances, and it's taking into account the areas that are treated under this derogation. Member states can set their own national targets according to the formula that is set in the annex of the regulation, and targets can vary from 35 to 65%. So in practice, those members that comparing to an average from 2015 to 2017 have less than 70% of the Union EU average can set up their target to 35%. So they don't need to set the target to 50%, but to 35%. While those member states whose average has been above than 140% comparing to EU average, they must set a target of 65% comparing to the average. And this concept of intensity will be calculated by dividing the quantity of pesticides, of active substances placed on the market by on the surface area over which these active substances were applied. So historical progress will be taken into account, and also the starting points of member states. This is not actually, we're not happy because those member states who have intensive production on small areas surrounded by, I don't know, grasslands, they will be enabled to continue their practice because this is not actually a very good concept. And this question will also be raised today in exchange with Kyriakides, if we will have a chance. The questions were shared. Yes, Helmut. You have a question, Helmut?
No, I will wait until you're finished your presentation.
Okay. So the progress of the member states in achieving these national targets will be calculated annually and will be submitted, will be calculated by the data provided to the Commission, and the Commission will calculate the progress. Commission will publish this data by 31st August of each calendar year. And I'm not sure how it will be done. I need to read more about it, and I need to study the annexes. This is all I read about calculation. I hope I will have it ready for our next meeting. And to achieve these targets, it is emphasized that there is necessity to increase the availability of biological control and other non-chemical alternatives. And this should be done by providing the incentives for the adoption of low pesticide input pest management practices, which could be organic practice. So it was stated that member states will have help, support provided by member states in 5 periods of adjustment to this regulation. And measure of the progress is important because of the transparency in each member state. So there will be less possibility for member states to hide their lack of progress, because this progress will be submitted to Commission, and Commission will do analysis. The baseline for calculation of Harmonized Risk Indicator is 2011 to 2013. This was changed, I think. It was previously 2015 to 2017, but I will leave this to Helmut. And a baseline for calculation, the new Harmonized Risk Indicator 2A that will be introduced in this new regulation will be from 2022 to 2024, because this will be the first period on which this data will be collected and available. And Harmonized Risk Indicator 2 will be replaced starting from January 1st, 2027 with this new indicator. So I will now give the floor to Helmut after I answer the eventual questions. And yeah, we have a real problem with Harmonized Risk Indicator 1, because it totally underestimates the risk of most toxic pesticides. Yeah, as I already mentioned a few times, most hazardous pesticides should be banned now. We shouldn't be waiting for this progress of 50% to 2030 in this particularly toxic group of pesticides. Okay, Helmut, please.
Just to the second, to the goal of reducing the use of the most hazardous pesticides only by 50%, while reducing the overall use by 50%, means that there will be no effect on substituting the candidates for substitution, because if you don't do anything and you reduce the overall pesticides, you would expect to have just the same amount of reduction of 50% with candidates of substitution. But the law says we should substitute them. So this goal is not only unambitious, it's completely the contrary. It's saying don't change everything with candidates of substitution. So I do not know if they made the math on that, but this is really weird, in my opinion. So I think we should make a point on that too. So this cannot be a 50% reduction target for candidates, in my opinion. This was a comment to your thing, but I think there may be questions now, or?
Yes, yes, very good point. Thank you. We should definitely address this problem. Yes, I would like to give opportunity to Christian to ask the question. And then we can...
Yes, just a short question. When you say non-chemical alternatives, does this include plant-based pesticides, like, for instance, pelargonic acid? These can also have environmentally hazardous effects.
Yes, so it is stated that it can be replaced also with other. I don't know on which particular point you are referring, because when it says that in situation where we ask for replacement of most hazardous pesticides, it is allowed to replace this. I mean, allowed. It is envisaged that these most toxic pesticides are replaced with those less toxic, even if those are chemical and synthetic products, as long as they are less toxic. So in this context, yes, pelargonic acid also comes into as a solution, but of course this is not our first choice. Our first choice is always to try to avoid any need of any chemical pesticide use by applying integrated pest management, by introducing monitoring and early reaction, and then physical means of dealing with pests, and then biocides, and then as a very last solution, chemical pesticides. I don't know if that answered your question.
Yes, the reason for my question is that on one of your slides, it seems that you said non-chemical pesticides equals less hazardous pesticides. But for instance, when we talk about alternatives to glyphosate, pelargonic acid has been investigated as a potential alternative, but some scientists say that this would be even more hazardous than glyphosate. So I just wanted to point at this. We should not put non-chemical pesticides to be equal to non-hazardous pesticides.
Okay, thank you. What would be your suggestion in this case? What would be a solution if the pelargonic acid is their first choice to replace the glyphosate? Or anybody else, if anybody has some suggestion, it will be valuable for us to consider the options.
I don't have the solution. I'm just asking because in 2017 I thought that pelargonic acid would be a good alternative to glyphosate. And then afterwards I learned that this could be problematic. But you also have other examples of so-called natural pesticides, plant-based pesticides that are hazardous to the environment.
Yes, and to human health too. Yeah, Jana.
I have comment towards this. So I wouldn't make a difference really between chemically synthesized and plant-based, because you can get also very hazardous things from plant-based products. And I think this development of green chemistry, it could even grow. I think what we need to focus on are really the chemical properties. What I see really, what is difference, I would say that there is big difference what are the biological methods. I mean, like microbes, viruses, or insects. So these are kind of natural pesticides, which are another type. But I would not really sort these plant-based substances, because some of them could be also quite dangerous. So we should look really at the properties.
Yes, thank you, Jana. Helmut?
I think this discussion is also much about communication. And I think you are right that we should not say just because a pesticide is of natural origin, it is non-hazardous. This is not possible. I think there are many examples that can be made that the most hazardous and most toxic substances like I think you know maybe Botox, botulinus toxin is by far, by orders of magnitude, the most toxic to humans substance that we do have. And then there is nothing, and then comes the those secret nerve agents developed by the Russians and the US. So this is an example that is showing that nature was able to synthesize very, very toxic substances. So the communication solution, in my opinion, is just to refer to low-risk pesticides because they are classified by the Commission. They do exist. Baking powder is just such a low-risk pesticide. The most microorganisms are classified as this. So just for communication reasons, I think this is good. What I also want to say, and just working on a paper on that, I think one can show if one compares naturally occurring pesticides that are currently used and authorized for organic farming to chemical synthetic pesticides that are not applicable to organic farming, you find really statistical significant differences in environmental behavior and in toxicity to humans. So of course, you always can find some special examples where a natural occurring substance is problematic, but all in all, and I think this is also important to bear in mind because there's a lot of narrative from industry to say everything is the same, and it's not the same. So this chemistry narrative is something that we also have to counter, in my opinion.
Thank you, Helmut. Jana, you have a question?
Yes.
And then we will move to Helmut's presentation on the Harmonized Risk Indicator. Yes.
I had some comments, but maybe for Harmonized Risk Indicator, I could discuss later after Helmut's presentation. But I had about this calling PPP or pesticides. I think we have a strong observation in Latvia that say that the lobby tries to phase out the use of name of pesticides. They even try to say that herbicides are not pesticides, and they really don't like this name pesticides. And I think that's for me would be like quite good indication that we need to talk about pesticides. So this is a on purpose made replacement of wording, and we see also from climate change that this way of purposely changing wording leads society to think differently. As you said, plant protection and not pesticide, and people believe it's plant protection and nothing connected with toxicity, and that's why I think it is very important to stay on the needs to call the things in a proper way.
Fully agree. Yeah, as long as they don't call it medicines for plant.
Vitamins. We have even vitamins.
Yes. Okay, thank you, Jana. Good point. Okay, I will now give the floor to Helmut to tell us all about Harmonized Risk Indicator and the consequences we will have if the regulation will continue to use this indicator. Helmut, please.
Okay. I have prepared a presentation that I want to share. So maybe you have to unshare before. So that I can try to. Yep. So where is it? Okay. Can you see the presentation?
Yes, we see.
Okay. Yeah, the title of my presentation is Harmonized Risk Indicator 1, Risk Indicator to Promote Toxic Pesticides, ? And the only reason where there's a question mark is that there is still hope that this indicator, as it is now written in the proposal by the Commission, will not be the method finally of the Harmonized Risk Indicator that will be applied to measure the pesticide reduction target. because the amendment of Article 35 gives some hope that the process the Commission wants to initiate will lead to some improvements. What is the problem with the Harmonized Risk Indicator 1? One problem is that it simulates a reduction in the use and risk of pesticides, and this reduction can be in the orders 1, 2, or 3 orders of magnitude when low-risk pesticides are substituted through the most hazardous one. Yeah, and when I write low-risk pesticide, I will show afterwards an example. Baking powder, which is classified as a low-risk pesticide, if you use baking powder to deal with scab in apple orchards, and you substitute with baking powder the candidate for substitution, difenconazole, this will lead to an increase in the overall risk by 8 times. So this is one consequence of the Harmonized Risk Indicator 1. The other one is maybe has been known to experts for a longer time and already described by the European Court of Auditors. It's the fact that the Harmonized Risk Indicator simulates a reduction in the use and risk of pesticides already through a decrease in the sale of pesticides after they have lost their approval. So it's retrospective, and the baseline is raising all the time when you ban a pesticide or when a commission is banning a pesticide, but it's not used now, it's not used next year, but it has been used in the last 5 years, or has been used when the baseline between 2015 and 2017 was done, and this baseline is just how do you say, exceeding or growing, yeah, and thereby simulating a risk reduction. And there are 2 reasons for these 2 misconceptions that are very clear to be identified. One is the failure to consider the treated or treatable area. We could also talk about the failure to consider toxicity, but I will talk about this later. And the other is that the weighting factor 64 for not approved active substances is just used, and this is making those problems. I think you're all familiar with the Harmonized Risk Indicator 1. Here is just a copy-paste of the Annex 1, which is not describing the Harmonized Risk Indicator 1, but is describing the measure tool for monitoring the pesticide reduction target. And there is one difference, I do not know if everyone is aware of that. Between this and the Harmonized Risk Indicator, it's just the word chemical here. So you have 4 groups, and the 4 groups of the Harmonized Risk Indicator divide between low-risk active substances, but here it's low-risk chemical active substances, which means the biological substances are excluded from the calculation of this indicator used for pesticide reduction. And it's the same with group 2. Maybe another word on group 1. Low-risk chemical substances are, I think there could be much more. There are few active substances that, in my opinion, fulfill the criteria to be classified as low risk, but I think for bureaucratic reasons, they are not yet. So there are only, did not even count, but it's less than 5%, maybe 2-3% of the overall active substances. Most of them, maybe it's a bit more because of, if you look at organisms, microorganisms, but if you do not have them, then it's a very low number. The biggest number of active substances falls into the group 2. It's more than 80% of chemicals. They get weighting factor 8. It's just a chemical that fulfills the criteria of Article 4, is therefore approved. And there are substances that also fulfill the criteria, but just hardly fulfill the criteria because of some special properties, intrinsic properties. And these are classified as candidates for substitution in group 3. So candidates for substitution, and group 4, as we've said, is the group of substances that are not approved anymore, which lead in retrospective to the elevation of the baseline. And the problem, number 1, results from this thing that hazard weightings and not, but that the quantities, only the quantities of active substances sold are used for calculating these risk indicators. And the quantity, and I think the most impressive example for me still is 1 kilogram of quartz sand, which falls into group 2, weighting factor 8, is attributed the same risk than 1 kilogram of deltametrine. And deltametrine is a nerve poison, and you use it with 5 grams per hectare. So 1 kilogram is enough to get rid of most, if not all, insects on 200 hectares, while 1 kilogram of quartz sand is far not enough for my children to play, you know, and it's just used to get 5 trees to protect them from game. And this risk indicator, by not considering toxicity and neither considering the application rate, which is a proxy, of course, also for the, at least for the toxicity towards target organisms, is here making no difference. Yeah, and weighting factor 64, this is completely independent from that, another failure. And both of these misconceptions, independently from each other, both alone would be bad enough to make the pesticide reduction target completely useless. And I think this is the reason why Natalia said, if this harmonized risk indicator will stay the tool for measuring pesticide reduction, the sustainable use regulation, it would be better not to have it. I'm not 100% sure if we can say this, because there are other parts in integrated pest management in the sustainable use regulation too that could make sense. But pesticide reduction is, also here it's even counterproductive, because it's also counterproductive for the goal of increasing organic farming. Because as soon as almost every active substance that is applicable for organic farming has between 10 and 1,000-fold higher application rate than average synthetic substances. And therefore, the risk attributed to pesticide application in organic farming, even though it's much less frequently the case. In organic farming, we have, I think, at least in Austria and Germany, 90% of the areas not treated with pesticide, arable farming, for example. But even though the contribution of organic farming to the harmonized risk in Austria, where a quarter of the land is cultivated organically, is huge, just because this indicator is a mistake in itself. I do not know if it's necessary to go through this, but I would just do it once, quite quickly. This is an example to demonstrate what I've said before. Scab control on 1 hectare apple orchard. And the data I used, I took from the Austrian Register on Plant Protection Products. It's called like that. It's not called like Register for Pesticides. Difenconazole, a candidate for substitution, is only applicable in conventional farming. Baking soda, also, of course, in organic farming. Difenconazole is in the scale of the most hazardous pesticides, because it's a candidate for substitution and therefore gets the weighting factor 16. So this is a proxy for more toxic substance and should indicate more risk. Baking soda gets only weighting factor 1, which is the lowest possible weighting factor, indicating low risk. But just because of the simple fact that only 56 grams per hectare, and this is really, I mean, it's almost nothing. If you look, it's so on a square meter, you need the spoon of a knife. No, I don't know how to express this in English, but this is the how synthetic pesticides work. And for baking soda, which has a completely different molecular mechanism, you need 7 kilograms per hectare. And therefore, the risk that is calculated here is, so the partial risk contribution is around 900 from difenconazole, while the low risk substance is attributing to more than 7,000, which is an 8-fold higher risk. And this is, I think, perfectly showing why this indicator is pointing perfectly in the wrong direction. And yeah, last but not least, so how can this be fixed? The good thing is that the Commission says, we invite you to propose how this can be fixed. This is the new Article 35. And also the Court of Auditors said this could be fixed by improving the Harmonized Risk Indicator 1, or by just building a new one. What I think is, knowing that it took so many years for the Commission to get at least the Harmonized Risk Indicator 1, because member states were not interested in having such an indicator. They don't want pesticides to be measured, pesticides to be, sustainable. SIO has also shown that there's quite a lot of resistance against transparency on pesticide use. And so I think the way the Harmonized Risk Indicator is now is just a logical result of that, because it's a risk indicator that pretends to measure risk, but in fact it is helping industry to keep their most toxic substances on the market. As of the most modern, maybe, because banning is not bad for them. So I think repairing and having something simple is the most probable, or the way, the strategy to have the best chances, the best opportunities to really get it changed and get how do you say, the member states to dem zuzustimmen. Shit, my English, I have some language problems in a moment. So I will continue to my philosophy afterwards and just go on with the text. How can this be fixed? Two measures. One is just to consider the treatable area, or the area in theory to be treated, with the amount, and that means replace the sold quantities of active substance sold with the quotient of quantities of active substance sold and the active substance specific mean application rates. So, for example, 7.5 kilogram for sulfur and 56 gram per hectare for difenconazole, and this will result in a theoretical area, the so-called treatable area. And if you multiply this with the weighting factors, you have still the combination of sales data, but in a more sophisticated way, in a more realistic way, with these political but not toxicological, maybe a little bit also toxicological based weighting factors. And the second thing that has to be done is, of course, eliminate this retroactive baseline increase due to pesticide bans. So the weighting factor must not change as a consequence of a ban. So the 64 should be 8 for substances that were just normally approved before they were banned, and maybe 16 for, not maybe, but of course 16 for candidates of substitution when they are banned. And then in my opinion, the indicator will not point into the wrong direction. It will not be perfect, but it will be, I think, a good instrument to guide us through the 50% reduction target. And the reduction target would be a meaningful target, meaning that member states really have to change their practice to get there. And it's not only by the Commission just banning some substances that industry wants to get rid of because they need the market to be cleared for their new substances. So yeah, this is one solution, and the struggle will be quite hard. What you see here is a statement from the website of the French industry lobby. And just one day after the presentation of the Commission proposal, after we had our press conference where we criticized the Harmonized Risk Indicator and asked for improvement, and also proposed the NODO, which is a French indicator, as a role model for such a solution. And in fact, what I have now described on a more general basis by taking into account application rate, this is what the NODO and what also the Danish treatment frequency index have implemented already. And this is based on the pesticide registration data of every member state. So the data are just available. And here, the French industry lobby made a big article how perfectly the Harmonized Risk Indicator fits to reach the reduction target, and that it's scientific based, and that it takes into account the risk of pesticides, weighting factors, which the NODO does not, and so on. Yeah, so they already start to fight, and I think we have to be prepared to counter these arguments. Thank you.
Thank you, Helmut, for this great presentation. So basically, it means that if farmer wants to contribute to a reduction target, the farmer should use the most toxic pesticides in favor of, comparing to, for example, natrium bicarbonate. So this harmonized risk indicator actually supports the use of most toxic pesticides, right? If we want to achieve, yes. Well, I would suggest now that we hear Christian and Danish concept, and then we can discuss and compare these two indicators. So Christian, if you can please take the floor now, and I can share the presentation, or you can share it yourself as you wish. Please unmute yourself, Christian.
I would like if you would share the presentation.
Sure.
That's most convenient for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I must start by apologizing that I'm only partly up to date on this issue. I'm covering different topics in our NGO, and pesticides is not one of the largest of these topics. I've been away from it for a few months, and it was only yesterday that I was asked to make this presentation. So I managed to reach an officer from the Danish Ministry of Environment, and part of my presentation will be based on the conversation I had with him yesterday. But if you take the next slide, please. I borrowed 2 slides from the ministry, and what I'm going to say is based on the relation between the indicator and the Danish Pesticide Tax. Because the Pesticide Tax is a very important part of the Danish pesticide strategy, reduction strategy. And in 2013, the pesticide tax was changed. So it was based on the pesticide load indicator. so therefore, I'll also tell a bit about the Danish Pesticide Tax. Before, it was a value-based tax based on the quantity sold. And then it was changed to being differentiated according to health and environmental criteria. And the new purpose of the tax was to encourage substitution to products with lower pesticide load in terms of pressure on human health and the environment. This was linked to a goal of a 40% reduction in the pesticide load by the end of 2015, meaning during 3 years. And this goal was reached in fact, one year before, in 2014. Next slide, please. There was an evaluation in 2018, and the conclusions were that Denmark reached this substitution from pesticides with a higher load to pesticides with a lower load. I must also tell that before we introduced this pesticide load indicator, we had two other indicators. One was the treatment frequency index, and the other was the number of tons of active ingredients. And the latter, the tons of active ingredients, is a very bad indicator, because then you can just change to more effective pesticides used in lower dosage, but they might be more hazardous, and then you can nevertheless reach your goals. The other indicator, and the point was that until 2013, Denmark had to reach reduction goals according to both indicators, the treatment frequency index and the number of tons of active ingredients. As far as I understood your presentation, Helmut, I understood your proposal as something quite close to what we call the treatment frequency index. It's defined as the amount of pesticides being spread on agricultural land divided by the recommended dosage of the single pesticides. When this new PLI, pesticide load indicator, was introduced and implemented in 2013, Denmark managed to decrease the load by 40% compared to 2011, and nevertheless still managed to keep the production of the crops that we had before. Also, some special and high-value crops could still be grown in Denmark, in spite of this reduction of pesticide use. Next slide, please. Afterwards, it was measured in 2017 that there had been a reduction of 47%, a little more reduction compared to 2011. Then I'll tell you our conclusions in my NGO, Green Transition Denmark. And they were that it was a good thing that the pesticide load was reduced. So we did not see this indicator as counterproductive, as I understand that you, Helmut, see the Commission proposal as counterproductive. But on the other hand, our opinion is that Denmark should have kept the treatment frequency as an additional indicator together with the pesticide load indicator. And our reason for this is that we only know the pesticide load if the pesticide is thoroughly tested and evaluated. And in spite of the EU regulation of approval of new pesticides, in practice we see that we do not have full knowledge of the properties and the effects of all the approved pesticides. And if we don't have this full knowledge of the effects on health and environment, then the pesticide load indicator will be insufficient, while the treatment frequency indicator will still be valid even if we have insufficient knowledge about the properties and effects of the single pesticides. Next slide, please. During my conversation with the officer from the Danish Ministry of Environment yesterday, he explained what he saw as the difference between the Danish pesticide load index and the Commission proposal. He said that the Danish PLI is based on the single properties of an active ingredient. For instance, how fast the substance moves through soil and through water, and how it affects different target organisms, while the Commission proposal is much more simple. And as Helmut explained, it's based on the approval status of the substance belonging to the 4 groups that Helmut showed. So it's not differentiated on the different properties like the Danish load indicator is. I've seen from the debate in Danish media that the representatives of Danish agriculture commented on the Commission proposal and saying that they expect very small demands from the new EU regulation if it is adopted, because Denmark has already reduced so much, as I explained before. So this is, of course, for us a warning that this Commission proposal will not be helpful for us as Danish NGOs, but it doesn't tell what will happen in the rest of the EU. Next slide, please. What we've seen with this pesticide load index is that in 2010 to 11, the value was 2.94, and then it was reduced in 2022 to 1.96, and now in the latest political agreement from February this year, a new goal for the PLI was adopted on 1.43 in 2030. The main contributor to this reduction will again be the pesticide tax, and this has been changed. It's divided in two parts: a tax on kiloactive ingredient, and this is a basic tax, no matter what is the hazardness of this ingredient. And then the other part is based on the pesticide load index. And the first basic tax has been reduced, while the second, based on the pesticide load index, has been increased. The reason why they decided this was to have a lower tax on pesticides with the least impact on health and environment. And this would, for instance, help organic farming because the pesticides that are approved for organic farming also have this basic tax, while they normally not have a pesticide load tax. But this officer from the Ministry of Environment, when I asked him about the glyphosate, he said that this change in the tax, the Danish tax, would lead to a decrease in the tax on glyphosate. And this shows that according to the Danish PLI, glyphosate is seen as one of the less hazardous pesticides. And this is, of course, linked to the fact that, for instance, the carcinogen property of glyphosate is not recognized in the EU system. I think this was the last slide. Yes. So these were my words. Please put questions if you like. I hope I can reply.
Yes, Henriette, please.
Yeah, it's more common than a question, Christian. It's true that this morning, like I said, I met the head of unit who's responsible for the suit, and he also said that it's incredible. Everybody only focus on this reduction target, so all attention is on this. And so this is why nobody started to talk about, the other topics of the proposal. So maybe it's good that the farmer unions say there's no problem, because then maybe they will not see that it's still being proposed that all sensitive areas go pesticide free, for instance. So maybe it's a good thing. Maybe it's a bad thing, but maybe they're all focusing on the wrong battle. It was more common than that. Yeah.
Yes, this reminds me that I forgot to say that after 2013, this application frequency indicator, as I explained before, the number has increased at the same time as the PLI indicator decreased by 47%. The application frequency has increased. And this is one of the reasons why we say that we should also have a goal for reduction according to the application frequency indicator, but we don't have this in Denmark anymore.
Thank you. So we are almost at the end. So we will have these two quick reactions / questions. Jana?
Yes, I had one question for both for this HRI indicator and also application frequency. I'm coming from the chemicals management field in industry, and they are using different type of indicators to understand risk. And there is also life cycle assessment methods. And from first, what I have heard, I think they are more precise because with regard to this chemicals toxicology, when you calculate exposure, and this is done also for pesticides, you are looking for residues which are in the environment after application, and then you try to combine with toxicity. So it is more difficult, of course, but it is also possible to do. And of course, this approach by this HRI, it is totally, how to say, vague and bad. And I'm thinking now maybe we need to try to compare, for example, a pilot case with different pesticides with applying these different methods, and then we could calculate how precise these methods are. So because what I'm really surprised, I'm surprised that in this pesticide area, there is a try to develop new methods, and especially the first method is not very scientifically based, despite that you really have scientific methods which are not, how to say, also very perfect in LCA and chemicals toxicology, but still they are scientifically ground. That's what I'm surprised. And yeah, would it make sense if we would make such a pilot case? Because I think if we would like to try also to get scientists for that who are able to calculate that, and that would mean we would need to initiate a project. It takes, of course, at least 2 years until you are getting the real results.
Yes, thank you. Pilot case we can discuss in a separate meeting. This is a very interesting idea. I would now let Francois and Pauline ask a question, and then Helmut and Christian can answer. So Francois, please.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Very quickly, the European strategy was very clear that we were aiming towards a reduction of 50% in risk and use. So we definitely need 2 indicators, not a combined indicator evaluating we don't know what. So I think there is maybe some not legal, but at least logical approach to ask for 2 different indicators. And there is a trick there that is absolutely unacceptable to produce a single indicator mixing both aspects.
Yes, that is true. I don't know if somebody can answer this important question. Maybe Henriette. No, okay. Helmut can answer.
I mean, I perfectly understand your point, Francois, but as I understood, the Commission is of the opinion in their proposal that they already have 2 indicators, one for the risk and use and one for the risk. And the indicator for the risk is just, and it's very simple, yeah. Risk and use is Harmonized Risk Indicator 1, because the use is reflected by just a kilogram, and the risk is reflected by the 4 different groups. Yeah, so in a simple way. And the second, which is reducing the risk only, and I think this is something that makes sense if you want to get rid of those candidates for substitution, is to reduce or to measure the use of candidates for substitution. So this is also the second part of the targets. And they have not designed a special indicator for that, but they use just a Harmonized Risk Indicator 1. And when we talk about Harmonized Risk Indicator, it's a special Harmonized Risk Indicator because it's excluding biological substances. This is the big difference between Annex 6 and Annex 1 in the sewer. I only spotted it today in the morning, I have to admit, because we always were discussing why are there two different annexes. It's just a simple word, chemical. So I think we have to be very strategic and really decide that we go for a goal that is possible to be won. And I think asking for changes that are too fundamental, this will lead to so many discussions, first within NGOs, then within the scientific community, then with our allies. Yeah, I had a discussion 3 hours with the UBA in Germany, and maybe this is interesting for you. They got aware on the problem with the Harmonized Risk Indicator only recently. Only I think it was in fact our paper and the press conference they have already looked into. And then they decided, maybe also because the Minister of Environment is a green one now in Germany, to make a statement. And then they got in contact with IFOAM and also with me. And we had a meeting there. And the indicator they wanted to go for, firstly, was the pesticide load index. Because from a scientific point of view, there's a lot of good ideas in it. But there are also some, in my opinion, problems also with every indicator has its issues. Yeah, and meanwhile, the UBA is more in the direction of the treatment frequency index, the NODU, yeah, because it's the more simple approach and it's not so dependent on just the state of knowledge. And if you use this indicator, you go for less in terms of frequency, less frequently using pesticides. And of course, you need another indicator to make sure that low-risk substances are not discriminated, which is actually the case, and that high-risk substances are, of course, discriminated. And then we need also a European Commission that is doing its job in putting substances properly into these categories, so that
yes, I understand, but well, just a short answer before leaving the floor to Pauline. But I think we need to stick to, this is my opinion, to two indicators, because if words do have a meaning, the objective by the Commission is reduce use and risk. So we should be able to measure use and to measure risk, not both together. So this is my point. I understand strategically it has to be discussed, but accepting a mixed indicator from scratch is accepting the defeat from scratch and the influence of industry from scratch, because well, we accept that we abandon these two separate goals. And personally, I don't accept this, but because it's already a defeat accepting that.
I think we have, so that the chance that we can win this is 0.0. It's so complicated.
So we must publish a press release in which we admit that we have lost the battle. Then.
And the time is so short. So I think what we now have is a reduction target, and we can have nothing in the end, or even something counterproductive, or we will have a reduction target with an indicator. And I would not really stick to just the wording in the proposal. If use of pesticide is decreased, and we make sure that this does not lead to an increase in risk, and this is something that I think we can make sure with this indicator, because it's a bundle of goals. It's not only the farm to fork is not only the goal of reduction, of reducing use and risk of pesticides, but also the second goal, reducing risk, focusing on the candidates for substitution. And then there is the goal of increasing organic farming. And altogether, I think, would lead, if it's reflected in the framework and in the legal.
There was a question
yes.
there.
Sorry, we are almost at the end. We can have a few more minutes just to wrap it up, this topic. I would also like to mention, Henriette just reminded me on SIO, on statistics on agricultural inputs and outputs. Collection of data will start from actually the farmers will be obliged to have data collection in electronic form from 2025, and the collection starts from 2028, and first results will be in 2030, I think. And this is a problem because we will not have the possibility to measure the progress toward reaching the targets, reduction targets. So this is something that we also need to have, we would like to have included in SIO. I will now let all of you to ask their question and comments. And we also envisaged today to have talk about national action plans in sensitive areas, agriculture, integrated pest management. We will not have time to do that, and we will have another meeting. We will inform you when we will have a meeting. If not before, then if not sooner, then it will be on July 12th. And we need to also discuss these important topics, but today we will not have possibility. So please, Henriette, could you please give your word, and then we all can wrap it up with our comments. Henriette, please.
No, it's more that what is important to remember is that, just to reply to Francois, is that this sewer that we are discussing, it's not a sewer only lasting until 2030. So, you know, the battle is that SIO, we will start collecting pesticide use data on an annual basis as from 2028, but it will only be released as from 2030. It's a political battle. This is what member states want, because they do not want the pesticide use to be the indicator to measure on the farm to fork. Okay, so I don't think we lost the battle, because like I said, the sewer proposal goes beyond, but, you know, maybe we should start talking about pesticide use, getting it into a system. I do think that the sewer is opening it up for discussions, but we will just not win them for now. But we can, you know, it's not lost. I mean, I don't think we lost our fight. I think we just have to adjust our demands a little bit.
Yes, thank you. Francois, did you want to comment? Oh, Francois left.
No.
Okay.
I leave the floor to other colleagues.
Okay, thank you. So, Pauline.
So I put my question into the chat. It was for a question for Christian. You said that the Danish indicator take into account the single properties of the substances. So does that mean that, for instance, health value or environmental value like PNEC or DT50, KOC value are taken into account into the indicator? Which is what is really actually taken into account?
Should I reply at once?
Yes, Christian, thank you.
Yes, I cannot reply precisely, unfortunately, to your question. What I mentioned in my presentation was what I learned from the officer from the Danish Ministry of Environment. The examples he gave were, as I understood it, were on the ecotox field and not on human health. But at least what he said was that the Danish indicator is differentiated on different properties and effects of the single substances. Oppositely, what's the case for the Commission proposal. So that's all I can say just today. But I would like also to have a final comment, and that's I'm very happy that you were able to make this webinar just today, because we have a national hearing in Denmark with a deadline tomorrow. And this is a hearing linked to the fact that Denmark is one of the countries where the government needs a mandate from the parliament for the negotiations, and the government asks for input tomorrow for this mandate. I'm considering if we should write about what you said, Helmut, that this indicator from the Commission could point in the totally wrong direction. But if we should do that, we have to give some kind of scientific reference. I don't know your personally scientific background, but if you can help with some scientific reference of on the example you gave that this indicator could point in the wrong direction, I think that this is necessary if we should be taken seriously by the ministry, if we give such a fundamental criticism of the Commission proposal.
Thank you. Yes, Helmut, please.
So maybe just call me after this video call, and we can talk about what could be an input, if you like, Christian.
Yeah, I'm afraid what I need is, as I said, a scientific reference to some publication or some presentation from a scientist. Also because I'm not an expert of this, so it could be a long conversation, and I'm not sure that I would be able to put it in the right way in our hearing response.
Yes, okay, so sorry, Helmut. So Christian, Henriette will also provide her opinion on your feedback to your government, and you can exchange email and number with Helmut. You can definitely, you should exchange your information. And Helmut, did you wanted to comment? Previously you raised hand if you want to comment, so we can wrap it up.
I don't know if there's enough time. I could share one graph on the PLI that was presented by the German authorities in our last meeting, and it shows that in Germany the pesticide load from 2017 and 2018 decreased by 70% according to the pesticide load index, just because of the ban of neonicotinoids.
Mm.
And
yeah,
this.
So sorry to interrupt. Sorry to interrupt again. Sorry to interrupt again. I think we are all very interested in this indicator and this case. So I suggest that we all stay a bit longer. So if you can show us this indicator, it would be great. If this graph, I think that we can all still stay for I don't know, 10 minutes. Is that okay? That we prolong?
So this is the website. Can you see it?
Mm-hmm.
So I can afterwards share also with you the link on this website. It's a website where you can look into different kinds of indicators. And this is what the Julius Kühn Institute has calculated based on the on the pesticide load index. And as you see, in Germany, the pesticide load was reduced dramatically. And this is just due to the neonicotinoid ban, which of course is a change in the whole situation. But I do not think that the risk has really, in fact, out there been reduced that much. And such effects you can get when you use indicators that are relying much on weighting factors.
Yes.
And just also the decision. Do you look into, or what weight, what importance do you give bee toxicity to bees, and what is it worth to protect soil organisms in comparison to that, and what is it worth to protect amphibians, and do I differentiate between different kinds of amphibians, you know? And so these decisions that you have to make by just building such an indicator have dramatic influence on the outcome. This is the strongest argument for me to look into treatment frequency in area-based indicators, because the only way to get these huge changes is really changing the frequency of applying pesticides. And applying pesticides in all cases means that you interfere with the biodiversity out there on the field. So it's interfering with the ecosystem. And of course, you should differentiate between different types of pesticides. And this, yeah, should be done by some simple, because I think everything that is not simple is very difficult to get a compromise within this short time weighting factors.
Thank you for this great.
Here, for example, as Christian has said, the pesticide load is calculated on different levels. Here, the pesticide load to humans, for example, has not decreased that much, but the pesticide load on the environment has. And yeah, this is the pesticide load on the environment, according to the PLI.
Okay, thank you for this explanation. It really sums up the problem with banning the most toxic pesticides and misleading in the measurement of the use of pesticides. I will need to now stop because my colleague is asking me to give her the floor to Zoom account. So thank you all for participating. This was really an interesting exchange. I'm so happy that you all understand how important this topic is. And for this reason, we will not discuss other topics that we envisaged for today, but we will organize another meeting. And I invite you all to register for the event on 12th of July. We will discuss it also there. And here in chat, please save these links. Here is the paper report that Helmut prepared, precisely on Harmonized Risk Indicator, where also important references can be found, and you can read the explanation on why this is bad. And Helmut also shared the link to the indicators. So thank you all for giving your contribution to this valuable exchange today. I'm very happy that this went so well and that we actually now understand much more on the indicator problem that we have. And I look forward to see you all in the next meeting. I wish you all a nice day. Bye, and thank you very much.
Thanks, bye.
Bye.
Fine. Thank you.
Thank you, bye.